All right, everybody hear me all right? Awesome. So I got 10 minutes, and those of you that have seen me talk in the past, I tend to talk fairly quickly. So I'll try to keep it understandable. But I want to thank the Michigan Wheat Program for bringing us here today. What we want to do is a quick 1-2 punch, a little bit on what my soil fertility and nutrient management program has going on in wheat research. So one of the big things we've tried to look at over the last couple of years is looking at the interaction of planting date, nitrogen rate, and nitrogen timing. We know there's 8,000 plus wheat growers in the state, and you're going to do your planting date and timing and rates 8,000 different ways. And so how can we come up with a program that appeals to as many producers as we possibly can? And so first off, for profitability, we know we must treat wheat as a first-class cash crop, and this begins with planting date. I know at the Great Lakes Crop Summit there are a couple discussions on treating wheat as a first-class citizen, and it is very true. We have to take a solid look at planting date. And that's one of the things we've started to do. We will be able to adjust our nutrient recommendations based on that planting date. And the other thing to consider, that R word right there, regulations. It's very scary, some of the regulations that are being discussed across the state of Michigan, not just for wheat, but for field crops in general, with regards to both N and P applications. The other thing we need to keep in mind is rapid spring plant development. And that's one thing we really try to emphasize with wheat production, because it takes a greater influence of suboptimal growing conditions, meaning you get 1 or 2 bad days in spring, it takes a bigger chunk out of your wheat yield than it does your corn and soybean, because wheat develops that quickly. And so what we want to do, obviously first then, is take a look at planting date, look at some early, mid, and late planting dates. And this goes back to the fall of 2013, when we had a planting date of September 17 versus October 11 versus October 28. And you can see what difference we had in tiller development come December. So before we received snowfall for last winter, we had about 4 tillers per plant come December versus 1.8 tillers versus 0 tillers. So right there, you can see the effect that planting date can have. Move forward one slide to December of 2014. Again, early, mid, and late planting dates, quite a difference. This last fall versus last fall. You can look at September 29th. That December, we had about 1.2 tillers. October 10th, no tillers. October 23rd, no tillers. Here we just had a main stem coming out of the ground, and here we only had the main stem and a couple leaves. So quite a difference between fall of 13 and fall of 14, and that might impact some decisions you make here coming up in the next few weeks with your N application timing. April of 2014, you can look at how that wheat looked with that early, mid, and late planting date. Is that early planted wheat looked absolutely beautiful. Come April 23rd, oh my gosh, you could pick that out from miles away, that field. October 11th planting date, not too bad. The October 28th was lagging quite a bit, but did catch up. Plant height come June 18th. That early planted wheat, we're probably anywhere between about 39 and 42 inches. Mid-planted wheat, about 36 inches. That late planted wheat, we're in the upper 20s, 26 to 29 inches. But that early planted wheat, where you went out at the recommended N rate, both some of the MSU recs and some of the other recommendations that are followed in the state of Michigan, look what happened. Lodge, lodge, lodge. So planting date does play an impact. When you start looking at yields that we got just by planting date, average across N rates and average across N application timing, you can see where we ended up. That October 11th planted wheat last year, 111 bushels. And that's pretty marginal ground that we were on down there. It's nothing special. It's not high fertility site. It's not high management. That late planted wheat, around 80 bushels. And again, what could have been with that early planted wheat, we ended up with 89, probably with about 40 to 50% lodging. Okay, we did some stem counts and head counts. We were probably looking at 140 bushel wheat. Okay, and that was pretty marginal ground that we had those plots on. So we did repeat that this year. And so we will showcase this next year's effective planting date, N rate, and application timing at the upcoming field day in June. What impact did N rate have on yield by planting date? When you had that early planted wheat, we could back off on the N quite a bit. So again, we looked at 3 N rates, 75, 105, and 135. That 75 units of N applied in spring, maximized yield. Didn't need to go any higher. Look at that mid-planted wheat, October 11th. Again, statistically, maximize the yield with that lower N rate. It wasn't until we got into that late planted wheat, end of October, where we had to begin to push the N rate a little higher. Computer's thinking, it's digesting the data. There we go. And it's interesting to look at, we took some shots from above what this wheat looked like right before harvest, and this is the early planted, one replication of the early planted wheat. You can see where we had 75 units of N, everything was standing, 105 units of N, it was about half lodged depending on your N application timing, and 135 units of N, everything was lodged. So what did we find preliminary data from this last year? One, pre-October 1, we still maximized tiller number, we maximized head counts, etc. Can we minimize risk of too good of a stand? Yes, there are management options. And we've talked a lot about that through the winter meetings, and we'll talk about that more at the upcoming field day in June. October 1 to 15 and October 15 to 30 could still probably be grouped together when you start grouping together early, mid, and late planted wheat. The old N rate equation of 1.33 times your yield potential minus 13 still works pretty well for your mid-October and later planted wheat. Believe it or not, we've been within about 10% of that recommendation over the last couple of years. Okay, so it still tends to work fairly well. For some of that early planted wheat, that's what we're really trying to focus on. How can we back off some of the N recommendation? Focusing on planting date, April rainfall. Okay, April is the month, especially here in Michigan. Look at your April rainfall. If it's above normal, you might have to tweak that N application rate. Okay, and also look at rainfall intensity. Don't just look April and did we get 6 inches of rain in April over the course of 10 rainfall events? Or did we get a 3-inch rain and another 3-inch rain? It makes a big difference when you start talking about N movement in the soil. And timing, focus on spring weather patterns. We'll talk a little bit on that in a second. Basically, by delaying your application timing, some of the Feeks 5, Feeks 7 applications, how does that become a benefit? You reduce your opportunities for nitrogen loss. Okay, so you don't have that N out in the field when you do get a 3-inch rain April 15th. And the other thing, keep in mind, tillers formed after Feeks 5 typically do not increase yield. So N application on wheat oftentimes is to promote tiller development. You do it too late, you can have a negative effect on yield if you start forcing tiller development later in the life cycle of that plant. And the other thing that we're really starting to focus on is crop rotation. Crop rotation really sets the table for a lot of these factors that I just went over. And the problem has been the last couple of years, when can I get my beans out of the field to get my wheat in, right? Because soys have been so late. So what we're starting to take a look at is looking at some of those soybean maturity groups. And where is the best combination of that soybean-wheat combination to maximize both bean and wheat yield? Talked quickly about split application timing. This is what it looked like this last year in 2014. 135 units of N across the board applied as urea at green up, or 90 units at green up and holding 45 back for Feeks 5, or holding that extra 45 back for Feeks 7. This last year, you can see we saw about a 10 bushel bump by holding it back till Feeks 7. Why? We had more rainfall around Feeks 7 than we did Feeks 5, which is why we saw the yield increase. Go back to 2013, looks a little different. Okay, we saw about a 7 bushel bump with that Feeks 5 versus that Feeks 7. Why? We saw that yield reduction at Feeks 7, it was dry. So it's not just a matter of getting that N out in the field, you got to get that N into the plant, not just on the ground. Other big topic that we spent a lot of time on over the last couple of years and will continue going forward is nitrogen inhibitors, nitrogen extenders, nitrogen stabilizers. You can see this is what it looked like this last year, 2014, 90 units of N as urea at green up, 97 bushel wheat, using a urease and nitrification inhibitor. In this case was Super U, saw about a 5 bushel increase. Again, that was all at green up. And then using only a urease inhibitor, saw about a 3 bushel increase. So not the biggest increases in the world, but yet it is trending positive. Why this year? It was a dry April. Okay, so when you use products like this, you need N-loss conditions in order to see a positive response. They're not miracle products. They work when you lose nitrogen. But if you don't have those N-loss conditions, I don't care what type of nitrification inhibitor or urease inhibitor you use, you will not see a positive response. So take a look at that graph right there. In 2014, I'll put the same thing from 2013 up there. And you can see what difference we got. Again, 90 units of N as urea at green up, 83 bushel wheat. Using both a urease and nitrification inhibitor, we went up about 13 bushels. Using only the urease inhibitor, we went up 5 bushels. Why the difference? April 2013, we got 7 inches of rain. April 2014, we got 0.9 inches of rain. So go back to that prior statement that I had. If you have N-loss conditions, these products can be a benefit. But recommending them is another story because I can't predict the weather. I'll try working on that if wheat gives me some more research dollars. Maybe I can come up with a weather prediction model for all the wheat growers. But until you can predict the weather, you don't know. It's a best case scenario. Look at the spring weather pattern. Does it look wet? Does it look dry? And use your own judgment. So again, I want to thank the Michigan Wheat Program for supporting some wheat research the last couple of years and going forward over the next couple of years. A couple of things that you'll see that we'll have signed out at the upcoming wheat field day in June. Again, we'll have the second year of the planting date, end rate, and timing study. We'll have a study out there using the Palisade plant growth regulator by several nitrogen rates to see if there's an effect at what end rate you're at. We'll have Palisade by planting date. Okay, so plant growth regulator by early, mid, and late planted wheat. We'll have nitrification inhibitors, all sorts of plots out on that, including fall applied nitrification inhibitors. Okay, so we got some really neat plots out there this year. Some N stabilizers, looking at what, when, and where. All sorts of different application timings. Starter N on wheat. And then we'll also have a new silicon trial, a new boron products trial, and a new zinc products trial to showcase for the upcoming Michigan Wheat Program Field Day in June. So again, I appreciate the support of the Michigan Wheat Program. I appreciate everyone being here today. I know I spoke fast, but we're on a time limit. And again, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to get a hold of me. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.